Chapter 4, From Cells to Organ Systems, Screencast 3. Now, this screencast is actually focusing on the skin. So this is the first of the organ systems that we're going to be studying. And it's kind of caught in with the other things related to organs and organ systems. So the real name of skin is the integument, and it's actually the largest of the organ systems within the body. Typically, if we look at what is included, the skin itself, but then there's also these accessory glands and structures. So those are going to be our hair, nails, and glands. Now, if I look at the primary functions associated with the integument or skin as an organ system, one of the really big ones is protecting from dehydration. Now, if we look at barriers, when we do the immune system, we have barrier systems, and the skin acts in that particular manner. So not just against general injury, but also, more importantly, a significant defense against microorganisms. So kind of think about COVID right now. The way that we generally will be infected by COVID is through respiratory droplets that we inhale. So our skin is protective in nature with regards to that. The skin is also helping to regulate our body temperature. It's responsible for the formation of vitamin D when there's sunshine around, and also sensation. So those are all general functions associated with our skin. Now here, one of the things that I want you to kind of keep in mind here is this is always an exploded view. Okay? We've cut ourselves before, so we know the skin is not really thick. Okay, here it kind of looks like the layers of the Grand Canyon, all right? But that's not necessarily the case. So I've got two general layers that make up the skin, the epidermis and then the dermis itself. And underneath is the hypodermis, and this is mostly subcutaneous. You'll hear that subcutaneous layer. So things that we want to see here is how well vascularized it is. Okay, so lots of blood flow, lots of nerve endings. So there's lots of various receptors for the various sensations that we feel. Here's hair. So I've got the shaft, the root, and the follicle. Okay, this is a sweat gland. Okay, there's that neural tissue again, adipose tissue, and so on. So you see there's quite a bit here. Okay, so I want you to think about the complex nature of what we're going to see. And here's kind of a micrograph. So of the epidermis, here you can actually see the hypodermis, the fat, and so on. Okay, so you should be comfortable with the various layers and primary and secondary structures or accessory structures associated with skin itself. Now, if I look at the epidermis, so that is the outer layer, and it is made up primarily of stratified squamous tissue. So there's our epithelial. There's no blood vessels here. Okay, and what happens basically is we're constantly producing new layers. Okay, this is going to sound kind of gross, but we're sloughing off consistently old dead layers of skin, which are on the surface. And what happens basically is the dermis is really kind of the living part. We'll kind of talk about that in just a second. But there's the epidermis, and it's mostly, okay, those top layers are dead cells. Okay, we're going to see some living cells and kind of notice what happens. Okay, as they get pushed towards the top, they get flatter, and as they get closer to the top, they're going to be further away from nutrients and things like that. So that's how they eventually kind of die. Now, as I said before, there's no blood supply, okay, to the epidermis, and you do want to be comfortable with the two different major types of cells that you're going to find within the epidermis. There's keratinocytes, and that's the waterproof protection. That's a protein, all right? It's also going to be protective in nature. And then we actually have melanocytes, and that's actually the pigmentation. Okay, so our skin color is due to the activity level, not necessarily the number of melanocytes someone has, but how much melanin are they actually producing. And then we can actually see the dermis under here, and that's actually, we're going to see blood vessels. So we'll move on, okay? So now the dermis, this is mostly dense connective tissue. It's underneath the epidermis. And its supporting tissues, we're going to find lots of fibers here, okay, that are providing the strength and elasticity that we find in our skin. So collagen fibers, based on their diameter, are actually comparable to the strength of a steel fiber. Okay, so very, very strong. Okay, but also a degree of flexibility associated with them. Now, if we look at cells, primarily we're going to find fibroblasts. Those are the most abundant. Mast cells, those are mast cells along with white blood cells, are kind of tied in with immunity. And then we also have fat cells that are going to be protective in nature and insulation. Now, hair, we basically have the shaft, which is above the surface of the skin, and the follicle is underneath. Okay. We also have smooth muscle associated with the hair, and that basically, kind of imagine when you're scared, okay, you see a cat and the hair stands up on its ends. That's actually the smooth muscle contracting, causing the hair to rise in that upward position. And then also there's sebaceous or oil glands, and they secrete what's known as sebum. Now, this also is going to be protective in nature. It actually has antibodies, but its primary function is to moisten and soften the skin. Now, sweat glands are important. Okay, they basically play a major role in thermal regulation, and remember, it's going to be the evaporation of that sweat that results in the cooling. We kind of talked about the sebaceous glands already, and those are secreting oil, okay, and we'll find those moistening skin and softening the hair. Blood vessels, that's going to be responsible for supplying nutrients, removing waste, but also plays a really important role when we're talking about thermoregulation. And also lots of sensory nerve endings. Think about the things that you can feel, that you're sensitive to with regards to touch. So because of these sensory nerve endings, we have sensations that we feel like heat, cold, touch, pressure. Could be light pressure, deep pressure, light touch, deep touch, and also vibration. So those are all structures that play a really role in helping us be aware of our external environment.